looks like no other.
I was wondering when you'd do that.
The end of the affair is being hailed as the year's great romance.
So, you'll marry me. That's the promise.
A powerhouse of emotion.
I've never loved anyone as much as you.
Ray Fiennes and Julianne Moore are electrifying. Destined to be well remembered at Oscar time.
You think love ends just because we don't see each other?
The end of the affair. Rated R.
Well, Julianne Moore did get an Oscar nomination. Ray Fiennes, not so much. You basically have a story here based off of a novel by Graham Greene. Not Graham Greene, the actor, Henry Graham Greene, a British author, which was already adapted many years ago in 1955 with Deborah Kerr. You have a story here about an extramarital affair which lasts from 1939 to 1946, set during World War II and its aftermath. There's really not a lot in this film. This is directed by Neil Jordan. You could tell one of the last films he made is the last film he made in this decade, and he was kind of on a downward spiral at this point. This wasn't as bad as this film that started the year off, In Dreams, but it's not a film that's going to really boast up anything that compared to where we was back at the start of the 90s when he did The Crying Game and Interview with a Vampire. He'd been kind of on a downward spiral since then. In fact, not many of the movies I'm looking at on here had any lasting power to it. I mean, a couple of films here and there. Breakfast on Pluto was notable with Cillian Murphy in it. The Brave one was probably the biggest success he had. Is from this point afterward. But other than that, though, some of these other films I've seen on here have not had any lasting power whatsoever. Nor has this film really. I mean, it's pretty much what you'd expect it to be. A story about these two people who have an affair, and they end up going through this chaotic storyline, and there's really nothing new about it that hasn't already been done already in other stories like this. I mean, they're trying their hardest to try to make this feel like something unique and different, and the only thing that really makes it stand out are the performances by Fiennes and Julianne Moore and Stephen Ray. I mean, they are really the only three things that are really carrying this movie in the long run. But other than that, though, it's a largely forgettable film. It's a film that has nothing of value to it whatsoever. We've seen this done over and over again, done much better in other movies, but it's a largely forgettable film. If you want to watch it, see it for the performances by Fiennes, Moore, and Ray. But other than that, though, it's not one you need to go out and see. So, with that said, let's move on to the last movie we have here, Woody Allen's Sweet and Lowdown.
I am Ray because he was interesting, sort of pathetic in a way. He was flamboyant and obnoxious, and he was funny. To me, Emmett Ray was a fascinating character.
I'm Emmett Ray. I'm the greatest guitar player in the world.
So the story of Sweet and Lowdown, you have a story about a jazz guitarist played by Sean Penn who falls in love with a mute laundress played by Samantha Morton. Like several of Allen's other films, such as Zelig, this film is occasionally interrupted by interviews with critics and biographers like Allen and a couple of others, including Douglas McGrath, who comment on the film's plot as if the characters were real-life people. And, I'll give Woody Allen this. It was certainly a lot better than the last film he did, which was Celebrity, which was a notorious misfire on so many levels. But here, it's passable. It's loosely based off of Federico Fellini's La Strada. But like I said, it's passable. It's a film that comes and goes. Like, if you want, like, it's Woody Allen doing the bare minimum of what a Woody Allen movie would be like. Like, you would, you got all the tropes in here that you would expect from a Woody Allen film, and I think the performances do carry it through. A good cast overall: Penn, Morton, Anthony LaPaglia, Uma Thurman, James Urbaniak, John Waters, Gretchen Mol, Dennis O'Hare, Brad Garrett's also in here as well. But other than that, though, it doesn't have that lasting power of some of Woody Allen's other movies, like Mighty Aphrodite or Midnight in Paris, or a lot better movies that he would do around this time period. I mean, this isn't one of his best films overall, but it's good enough to warrant enough to watch the performances alone, and some decent comedy to it. I mean, I guess he's trying to go for something like a little bit something on the level of something like The Purple Rose of Cairo, but it's not quite to those levels. But like I said, the only reason you're really watching this movie is for the performances by Penn and Morton, which both were nominated for Academy Awards. And if you want to see Woody Allen do what Woody Allen usually does very well, you'll get the bare minimum of it. It's not one of his strongest films. He's made a lot better movies in this decade of the 90s, but he would kind of rebound shortly afterward a little bit. Actually, it would take a while before because you make a couple films that weren't great overall, had some interesting ideas to it, but none of them really could. He wouldn't have a really great film again until midway through the 2000s. We'll eventually get to that once we get to Match Point, but we'll look at some of the other ones as we go down the road here. But Sweet and Lowdown, passable film, not one I would say you should watch repeatedly. For a one-time watch, it's fine for what it is, but definitely could have been a whole lot better. So, fine for what it is, but Sweet and Lowdown, I just realized I forgot to talk about Mansfield Park, but considering I've never seen the film, honestly, I'm just not going to really worry about it. If I have to, I'll go back to it when I do the 1999 Leftovers episode. So that's why I didn't do it at the beginning like I said I was going to. But, like I said, I haven't seen it, so I can't really say too much about it. So it wouldn't even matter anyway.
Why's that? He's enormous. In the solar man, he deserves to die for what he's done. He found with the victims in his own. I don't think he did it at all. Take my hand, boy. Do not see God putting a gift like that in the hands of a man who killed a child.
From the director of The Shawshank Redemption,
You're talking about a miracle.
Tom Hanks.
I am.
The Green Mile, rated R. Starts Friday, December 10th.
So as I mentioned, this is a story based off of Stephen King's 96 novel of the same name, and it follows a death row prison guard played by Tom Hanks during the Great Depression, who witnesses supernatural events following the arrival of an enigmatic convict played by Michael Clark Duncan. You also have characters played by David Morse, Bonnie Hunt, Sam Rockwell, and James Cromwell among the cast as well. And for Frank Darabont to come off of the Shawshank Redemption to do another movie set in prison may seem like a little bit of a been there, done that situation, but unlike Shawshank Redemption, this is a very different film, and a different film in a good way. This is a film that I think works because it does a lot of the same cliches that I usually talk about in Oscar bait movies that can get really, really old pretty quickly, but this movie does it in a way where it definitely feels warranted. Everything about the moments that feel like cliched riddle moments in movies like this feel like they're done well here because the writing and the direction here is well done. The acting is top-notch. I mean, Tom Hanks and Michael Clark Duncan are phenomenal in this film. You can tell why Michael Clark Duncan got a Best Supporting Actor nomination for this, because he really is fantastic in this film. He's kind of playing a cliched character overall, but he's a character that you really do get behind. You can really buy into this character situation, and you really want him to have a chance to have at least a happy ending in his life, where he doesn't end up getting eventually murdered, or not murdered, sent to the electric chair. But yeah, Tom Hanks, it's Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks will usually turn in a good performance regardless of the film he's in. And in this case, he does another good performance in here. The casting overall is very well done. There was a lot of complaints about the criticism, the length of the film, in terms of the criticism. I mean, yeah, it's a long movie. It's about over 3 hours long, and at times it could get a little bit. There's times when you can really tell that they could have cut that out of there, but it never gets boring. It's one of those movies that you just get so invested in what's going on that you don't really mind the length of the film. And like we've seen this year, Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, if you make a really good movie, it doesn't really matter what the runtime is. As long as you make a really good film out of it, we can buy into it. In this case, this is a film we can definitely buy into. It's a great follow-up for Frank Darabont following The Shawshank Redemption. And it's another really good adaptation of a Stephen King story. It's a very well-made film, boasted by two very solid performances by Hanks and Duncan. Can't recommend this one enough. I'm sure you've seen it already, but if you haven't, go see The Green Mile. It's definitely worth the watch. So with that said, let's move on to the complete opposite end of the spectrum with our next film, Rob Schneider in the comedy Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo.
$6,000 in 3 weeks. Maybe there's something we can work out.
If you were forced to become a gigolo,
Is Tina here?
I'm Gina. How bad could it be? From the producers of Big Daddy,
I have these uncontrollable outbursts. Shove it up your
Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo,
I have a sleeping disorder.
starts December 10th.
So the story here is that Rob Schneider is a hapless fish tank cleaner who goes into business as a male prostitute in an attempt to earn enough money to repair damage he caused while house-sitting for this other gigolo. And chaos and hilarity ensues, and I guess you could call it hilarity. I would call it. I don't think it's that funny. I mean, this is a film that this is one of those weird films that at the time it came out, people did kind of enjoy it. I mean, despite the fact that the critics didn't like it, it did gain a positive reaction from a lot of people. But then as soon as the movie went on had a successful run, and then they tried to make a sequel out of it, which I'll never forget when the sequel came out. Like, they were hyping that one up to be the next Austin Powers. Like, this was going to be the next Austin Powers, and then that movie crashed and burned because you waited 6 years to make a sequel for this. If you made it in 2001 or 2002, then maybe it could have been a successful film, but yeah, this is not a good film at all. I mean, it's a bad sitcom, quite honestly. It's a sitcom setup where the clients that do, like, here's this Argentinian male prostitute who gets all these sexy women to, and then when Deuce has to do the same thing, he gets all these weird-looking people, an obese woman, a woman who has narcolepsy, a woman with Tourette syndrome, a tall woman with like, if you're gonna do this, why not just go and grab that guy's, the male prostitute is the guy's black book, and just take some of their women? But you know why they won't do that? Because we wouldn't have a movie, which is probably a good thing. It's just not funny, man. Like, we've seen Rob Schneider can be funny if you give him the right material to work with here, but this was kind of the start of that downward spiral for Snyder, in terms of, like, when he became the leading star and he had to be like them, and he got control over the projects, and he picked some really bad projects, quite honestly. This is just one of those ones where it's just kind of like, back then we kind of enjoyed it for what it was, but as the time went on, it got old pretty quickly. I mean, this thing did not have the lasting power that I think this movie wanted to, and I think when that second movie came out, it was just over and done with at that point, because everyone knew how bad Rob Schneider's comedies were up to that point. But this, going back and watching it now, it's just not funny. It's just not a funny movie per se. It's not that unique. It's not that inventive. It's not that enjoyable in any way, shape, or form. It's just not a good movie. It's just not a funny movie. I've gone back and tried to watch it, and it's just not worth it in the end. I don't remember one single funny moment from this movie that I remember. And even when I saw it for the first time back in the day, I don't even remember a whole lot that made it funny. I guess the only positive thing that came from this is that this director, Mike Mitchell, went on to become a pretty good director in his own right, directing stuff like Shrek Forever After. He did the SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water, the first Trolls movie, his most notable film being Sky High. He did the Lego Movie 2. He did Surviving Christmas, which is one of those so bad it's good type of movies. And we'll eventually get to that one when we get to 2004. His only other really bad film was Shipwrecked, the Alvin and the Chipmunks sequel, but it's the Alvin and the Chipmunks live-action threequel, so of course that one was going to be bad, no matter who you got to direct it. But, I mean, at least this director got better after this point, with that one little blip right there, but, that's pretty much all I got for you on this one here. This is a forgettable mess of a movie. Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo. Avoid this one like the plague. So let's go ahead and move on to our next film. A couple of awards contenders, and you can definitely tell because they're going to tout out all the critical praises for these movies, for this movie in particular. The Cider House Rules.
Critics are calling The Cider House Rules a triumph, a stunning achievement. Gene Shalit raves, The Cider House Rules makes going to the movies a joy. It's passionately emotional, says the Washington Post. Time magazine calls it a tribute to the human spirit. And now it's nominated for 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture of the Year. The Cider House Rules, rated PG-13.
So the story centers around Homer Wells, who lives in a World War II-era Maine orphanage run by a doctor who trained him, and his journey after leaving the orphanage. And it stars Tobey Maguire, Charlize Theron, Delroy Lindo, Paul Rudd, Michael Caine, Jane Alexander, Kathy Baker, Kieran Culkin, Kate Nelligan, and surprisingly Heavy D and Erykah Badu, which I did not expect from that. This is directed by Lasse Hallström and also written by John Irving, who also wrote the book this is based off of. And that trailer is very much Oscar baity in a number of ways, but the movie itself is actually really damn good. It's a film that does warrant a lot of the emotional moments of the film, and I think the acting overall is really, really good. I mean, Tobey Maguire is very good in the film. Michael Caine won his 2nd Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in this performance, and it's a really good film. It's an effectively enjoyable drama. And it doesn't feel like it's trying to throw all the cliched little Oscar baity moments into there. It does it very so often, but never enough to the point where it really gets boring very fast. It's just kind of like, okay, you kind of earned it there. It's warranted when they try to do what they're trying to do here. And there's never a moment in here that felt like they're forcing emotions out of you. Like, everything that happens in this film is earned, and it does feel genuine. It doesn't feel like it's being crammed into you. It's a very solid film. I would highly recommend checking it out if you haven't seen it already. It's definitely worth the watch. The Cider House Rules. So, on to the next film. Tim Robbins' Cradle Will Rock.
Ruben Blades, Joan Cusack, John Cusack, Carrie Elways, Angus McFadden, Bill Murray, Vanessa Redgrave, Susan Sarandon, John Turturro, and Emily Watson. When the storm breaks, the cradle will rock! Cradle Will Rock.
Now, this film is clearly trying to be Oscar baity. This is Tim Robbins who directed this film. I think this was his follow-up to Dead Man Walking, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's his follow-up to Dead Man Walking. It's actually the last film he directed as a whole. He hasn't directed anything since then. And you have the story about fictionalizing the true events that surrounded the development of the 1937 musical The Cradle Will Rock. It adapts history to create an account of the original production, bringing in other stories at the time to provide a social commentary on the role of art and power in the 1930s, particularly amidst the struggle of the labor movement at the time, and the corresponding appeal of socialism and communism among many intellects, artists, and working class people in the same period. And it's not based off of Orson Welles' unproduced screenplay for The Cradle Will Rock, which was actually written in 1984 before Welles died, and the script was actually published in 1994, but that film had never been produced. Great cast overall. Hank Azaria, Ruben Blades, John and Joan Cusack, Carrie Elways, Philip Baker Hall, Bill Murray, Vanessa Redgrave, Susan Sarandon, John Turturro, Emily Watson. These are all really talented people, and it makes for a decent film overall because of the performances that are carrying the weight of the film. The rest of the film itself, though, it's pretty much your typical Oscar bait movie. It's a film that's trying to garner awards buzz and doesn't really feel like a lot of those moments that should be forced on as or things that are trying to force an emotion out of you should be there. But the film itself just really, it doesn't really do anything to make it stand out on its own. It's worth it for the performances on their own, but other than that, though, for a one-time watch, it's fine. But I really would have liked to see what Tim Robbins would have done after this as a director. He's directed two pretty good movies, Dead Man Walking and Bob Roberts, and this is kind of his worst film. But even then, it's not the worst film it's not a bad film per se. It's just not a great film compared to those other two movies, and definitely could have been a whole lot better. But as it is, it's fine for what it is. For a one-time watch, it's worth it, but it's one you probably never want to watch again. So that is Cradle Will Rock, and now let's move on to our last film, Kirk Douglas in Diamonds.
Kirk Douglas. Live each day as if it were the last.
Dan Aykroyd. Now you know you're a beautiful young woman.
Oh, Maverick.
Jenny McCarthy.
I just want you to caress every part of my body.
I'm gonna take her.
And Lauren Bacall.
Shall we dance?
Diamonds.
Where'd you learn how to do that incredible thing with your tongue?
This is something I learned from my grandpa.
Very cool.
So you have the story about a boxing champion, Harry Agenski, the Polish prince, who's now an elderly widow and a stroke victim, taking speech lessons and fear confinements in an old age home. He convinces his son Lance, played by Dan Aykroyd, and grandson Michael, played by Corbin Allred, to take him to Reno to look for diamonds he stashes, paid off when he threw a fight years before. Lance doesn't believe the diamond story, but wants a last trip with Dad, and all three have father-son issues to work out. After some gambling, they head to a brothel where each needs psychological intervention from a prostitute, played by Jenny McCarthy. Then it's time to find out if the diamonds really exist, and if a road trip together can strengthen family bonds. And it's really going to depend on how you feel about some of the elements they take in here. I mean, Dan Aykroyd can be a really good actor. He has been nominated for an Oscar for his work in Driving Miss Daisy, and you've got some good talent behind him too. Lauren Bacall, Kirk Douglas. Jenny McCarthy, though, is the real big question mark of the film. It's a film like this isn't as bad as some of McCarthy's other film works. Like this isn't Dirty Love bad, but you can tell she's at least trying to act. I mean, she's acting with all these legends is in this movie, and she's fine, I guess, but she isn't doing like the thing that's going to make you go like, oh man, this is the potential to be a really good actress in the future. This isn't like Lady Gaga in American Horror Story, when everyone just realized, hey, this girl can actually act. I mean, because she's proven she can act later on down the road. But in this, with McCarthy, like I said, it's a passable role. It's nothing really spectacular. I think the real thing that carries the film is the fact that you have people like Kirk Douglas, Dan Aykroyd, and Lauren Bacall working off each other. I mean, for Kirk Douglas to do this shortly, I think this was just after he had that stroke where it really altered his vocals as a whole. In fact, let me see if this actually was around then. 1996. So yeah, it was about a couple of years after this. But for him to keep doing this and doing something like that, I mean, more power to him, man. He kept it going for a long period of time, and up until his death in 2020 at 103 years old. The guy lived to be 103 years old, and he had that stroke for like 24 years. He was still suffering from that stroke after 24 years, man. That's I don't know what he was doing, but I'm hoping that this never happens. But if that day ever comes when I have a stroke and I have the chance to live, I can have the chance to live that long, I need to know what kind of a healthy diet he had around that time, because more power to him, man. I mean, to have that for 24 years and live as long as he did, that's pretty impressive stuff for him. But yeah, as far as the film itself goes, it's all right. For a one-time watch, it's okay, but it's not one you're going to want to pop in again anytime soon. So, yeah, that's Diamonds.
On a perfectly ordinary street, in this perfectly ordinary house, the Little family is about to do...
Remember, I want a little brother, not a big brother.
Something perfectly extraordinary.
Mr. and Mrs. Little, we try to discourage couples from adopting children outside their own species.
Mom, Dad, I'm home.
This holiday season, Columbia Pictures and the co-director of The Lion King invite you to meet Stuart.
Whoa. Snowball. Drop him right now.
You spit Stuart out this instant, Snowbell. Spit him right out. We do not eat family members.
Stuart Little.
A mouse with a pet cat.
A mouse with a pet cat. Coming this December.
Yes, I did all that just for that one little joke. But, I digress. This is the big screen adaptation of E.B. White's best-selling children's book of the same name. Centers around a family known as the Littles. You would happen to think of them as the nicest family to ever meet. One day, the parents, Frederick and Eleanor, played by Hugh Laurie and Gina Davis, both parents and Littles, go to an orphanage to find a brother for their son George, played by Jonathan Lipnicki. While there, they meet Stuart, played by Michael J. Fox, a small but charming mouse who apparently is human civilized. They adopt him, and everyone, even George, loves him, but there's one problem with Stuart's life, and that's Snowbell, the family cat, played by Nathan Lane, who wants him, but when trouble starts up almost immediately, Stuart must make his way back to his home before Snowball's friends find out about him. And, if you read the story for Stuart, if you actually read the Stuart Little stories, you know that this is actually not exactly what the books really go into. I think the books actually are a lot more... They go into much more of a deeper storyline than I think you would be led on just by that trailer alone. I mean, this one just feels like it kind of just takes the route that you would expect for a film like this to take. It's just a small story about this little kid, about this little mouse that ends up becoming a part of this family, and he has to find ways to, he has to basically survive life with this cat around, and basically all the cats in this town clearly want to eat him, even though this is one of those weird stories, kind of like with Twee's High Flying Adventure. Like, they all want this one little creature, and all the other birds and all the other mice in these movies are probably thinking to themselves, thank you, pal, because, like, they really do not care about any of the other mice in this movie, except for this one little mouse who's in the middle of this family. But yeah, it's a fun little movie. It's a film I went to go see when I was little. I never read the books before, so I just saw it straight from the movie itself. I never knew about the books until afterwards, but it's a perfectly solid film. It's a film that definitely delivers everything it promises. Gina Davis, Hugh Laurie, and Jonathan Lipnicki are very good as the family. Michael J. Fox is very good as Stuart Little. Nathan Lane's very good in here. A brilliant cast overall here. A lot of great names in here. Jeffrey Jones. Alice Beasley from Moonlighting and Recess, Brian Doyle Murray, Estelle Getty, Jim Dugan, John Polito, Julia Sweeney. The voice cast includes Chaz Palminteri and Steve Zahn, David Alan Greer, Jennifer Tilly's also in here, Bruno Kirby. I mean, they have a really good cast in this movie, and you probably didn't even notice it until, if you looked real close at the credits, you'll know that this film was co-written by one M. Night Shyamalan, who had broken out earlier in the year with The Sixth Sense. And again, never had any idea that he actually had a hand in writing the script for this. And you really couldn't tell because there's no big twist in this movie like it would be for a film. Imagine M. Night Shyamalan doing a family film with a twist nowadays. But in this movie, no, it's just a regular script from him, which is very interesting to point out here. It's also very important to also note out that Rob Minkoff, this is his live-action debut after directing The Lion King, and I believe he did the second one too, and then he did a couple other movies, The Haunted Mansion and The Forbidden Kingdom, and then he eventually went back to animation with Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and more recently, Paws of Fury: The Legend of Hank. So for him, this is an attempt to see what he could do as a live-action director. You know, this is something that probably he never tackled before up to this point, but he made it a success. He made a successfully fun, entertaining movie with a sequel that's just as enjoyable, too. We'll eventually get to that when we get to 2002, but this is a really good film. I'd highly recommend checking it out. Yeah, it's not the same as the book itself, but it's still a ton of fun. It's still a well-made film. It's a really good film. I really do recommend checking it out. So that's Stuart Little. So let's go ahead and move on to our next film, and that is Robin Williams in Chris Columbus's Bicentennial Man.
Found him.
It is a household appliance.
Andrew is just a machine.
And yet you act like it is a man.
But on December 17th,
one wishes to have more expression.
He'll show the world what he's really made of.
I am trying to make something of myself. I am trying to fulfill my destiny. How's it going?
Robin Williams.
Andrew?
Yes.
He's had an upgrade.
Bicentennial Man.
Kiss me.
No.
No?
No.
Rated PG. Special sneak preview tonight.
The marketing for this movie really does not sell the true enjoyment of what this movie is about. You basically have a story here based off of a story by Isaac Asimov. Actually, two stories by Isaac Asimov. One of them one of them is The Bicentennial Man, and the other is The Positronic Man, written by him and Robert Silver, which of itself is based off of Asimov's original 1976 novel of the same name. And the plot basically centers around issues of humanity, slavery, prejudice, maturity, intellectual freedom, conformity, sex, love, mortality, and immortality. And you have a story with Robin Williams playing this robot, and as time goes on and realizes that this robot can basically move on his own, he needs to figure out his purpose in life. And sure enough, as time goes on, he eventually becomes a human being, and he realizes that he needs to learn about humanity and all that. In a way, it kind of reminds me a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit of that not as memorable Andy Kaufman movie from the 1980s, Heartbeats, which is, at the time, was heavily panned by critics, much like this movie was, but over time it has gone to have a little bit of a following to it. And I think people are slowly but surely coming around to this particular film because it really did not get the best reviews when it came out. Everyone kind of looked at this and thought, oh, here goes Robin Williams with another bomb, but yeah, it unfortunately was a box office bomb, but really, it's a really good movie. And the trailers, I think, did a huge mistake of trying to sell this as a somewhat goofy comedy. This is a very serious, more dramatic storyline, and I think it does a very good job of handling that. This is one of Robin Williams' more underrated performances, and I thought he did a very good job in this film. The cast overall is great here. You've got Sam Neill, Embeth Davidtz, Hallie Eisenberg, the Pepsi Girl, Wendy Crewson, Oliver Platt, Stephen Root, Bradley Whitford, John Michael Higgins, George Wallace, Lynn Thigpen. Just a really phenomenal cast working on this film. And I think it did a very good job of taking a story that really has more to it than I think a lot of people let on. I mean, it is a little bit of a comedy and a little bit of a drama at times, but the dramatic elements, I think, work better here than in movies where Robin Williams was trying to play it too seriously, like stuff like like Jacob the Liar, or even Last Christmas, he had Patch Adams, which is a horrible, horrible movie. But this movie is at least much better. I mean, I think this delivers what Patch Adams should have done. I think this is a very good job of handling a story about basically coming into your own and trying to figure out your purpose in life. And it's a really well-made film. The visual effects on Robin Williams' makeup is really impressive. They did a pretty good job of making Robin Williams look like a robot and having him look like he's actually there. I mean, it doesn't look like he's on a green screen anywhere. He looks like he's right there, and I think they did a really good job of handling that. I love this movie. It's a very underrated gem. I think it's one of Chris Columbus's most underrated films, one of Robin Williams' most underrated movies. It's definitely not like a film like Jacob the Liar or Patch Adams, a movie that's just trying to give you a cheap emotional output. It's actually trying, and I think a lot of people really missed the point when it came out. I am glad to see that it is getting a little bit of a resurgence later on down the road. And this was the last film that Chris Columbus did before he really did take up his career off by directing the first 2 Harry Potter movies. And then that kind of changed his career around a little bit too. But this is a really good film. I highly recommend it. And for him, I should also say, this was a nice return to form for Columbus, because the year before he did Stepmom, which was also a cheap, forced emotional film, an Oscar bait movie, pretty much. But this is a much better film in my personal opinion. I like it. I really like it a lot. I can't recommend it enough. Bicentennial Man. Definitely check it out, because you really will be surprised at how much it actually is better than you think it is. So that's Bicentennial Man. Now let's move on to our next movie, and that is Jodie Foster in Anna and the King.
Oh, look.
She came to a world she did not know.
Have you any friends in Bangkok?
No.
With customs she couldn't understand.
Women do not stand in the presence of His Excellency.
And a king she would never forget. Jodie Foster, Chow Yun-fat, in the movie critics are calling one of the best films of the year. Anna and the King, rated PG-13. Tomorrow only in theaters.
From the same director that created a new spin on Cinderella the year before with Ever After. They try to do the same thing with Anna and the King, basically from the story of Anna and the King of Siam, giving a fictionalized account of the diary of Anna Linolens, played by Jodie Foster, and Chow Yun-fat as the titular King of Siam. And the story here is that you have an English school teacher in Siam during the late 19th century who becomes the teacher of King Mongkut's many children and wives, mostly shot in Malaysia. Basically, another version of The King and I in 1999. We already covered the animated version, which is horribly made, a horrible movie. This one is at least a little bit better, but not by that much. It's trying to take a lot of the elements from the original source material of the Anna and the King of Siam and try to present a different version of The King and I than what we're used to seeing, but it really didn't do as good of a job than I think that I wanted it to do. I mean, it's got beautiful cinematography. It has good people involved in the cast. Foster, Chow Yun-fat as the King of Siam, Bai Ling. Just some good talent all around. Tom Felton later would go on to become Malfoy? Yeah, Malfoy in Harry Potter. It's been a while since I've seen Harry Potter, but it just really didn't have a lot there to really make it something that should be seen. I mean, it has great cinematography, it has great actors involved, but there's just not that much there to really make it something that is as good as it wants to be. Plus, it really doesn't know what kind of a version of the King and I it wants to tell. Even though it's taking from the Anna and the King of Siam novel, it's trying to do some elements from the original Rodgers and Hammerstein show too at the same time, and it can't really figure out the placement of where it wants to go. And in the end, it just kind of feels like a missed opportunity on so many different fronts. It's a film that has a lot of good talent involved in it, but it really does not have a whole lot there to really make it something that you should see. It's a film that has a lot of high ambitions, but just not enough execution for me to recommend it. So, yeah, that's Anna and the King. So let's go ahead and move on to our last film that we have here, and that is Paul Thomas Anderson's follow-up to Boogie Nights, Magnolia.
There are stories of coincidence and chance and intersections and strange things told, and which is which and who only knows. And we generally say, well, if that was in a movie, I wouldn't believe it.
I'm Stanley Spector.
I'm Frank T.J. Mack.
I'm Jimmy Gator. I'm Phil Farmer.
I'm Dixon.
I'm Whisker Donnie Smith.
I'm Lily Partridge.
I'm Earl Partridge.
I'm Officer Jim Curring.
Claudia Wilson Gator.
Oh, for
These strange things happen all the time.
Yeah, this is a really bizarre movie. That frog actually plays into some of the more bizarre elements of the film if you haven't seen it. But basically, you have a story that's kind of like an anthology of these different characters who are in search of happiness, forgiveness, and meaning in the San Fernando Valley. And you have a really good cast that includes Tom Cruise, Melinda Dillon, Philip Baker Hall, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Ricky Jay, William H. Macy, Alfred Molina, Julianne Moore, John C. Reilly, the last film for Jason Robards, and Melora Walters. And for Paul Thomas Anderson to follow up Boogie Nights, this is a little too ambitious for his own good. I mean, it's not a bad movie per se. You do like the acting overall here, especially Tom Cruise, which I think this was the film that kind of made people realize that, hey, Tom Cruise can actually be a damn good actor and not just in a bunch of action movies. He actually got nominated for the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in this movie. Unfortunately, he didn't win, but it showed that, I think this movie showed that he has the potential to become one of the great actors that we know him as today. Like, he's a great action star, but he's also a really good actor if you put him in the right stuff, back like he was early on in his career. Direction is not bad, the writing is not bad, the storytelling isn't bad per se. It just runs a little too long. I mean, this is kind of like the Green Mile in a way. Like I said before with the Green Mile, if you have a good enough story to tell, you could make it work. But 3 hours for this is a little too much, and it does teeter on a little bit too much of an Oscar baitish type of movie, a little bit too melodramatic at times, and elements that, like I say, are so weird and bizarre, like the frogs raining down at the end of the movie. I just spoiled it for you, but yeah, when you think frogs falling from, at least when you see that frog in the trailer, my first thought was not frogs falling from the sky and creating havoc all over the place. It gets a little too crazy for its own good, and the movie itself is not bad. It's just a little bit disjointed at times, to a point where it does get a little bit too much of its own good. It has too much. What am I trying to say here? Let me think about what I'm trying to say here. It's trying to provide too much for its own good. I feel like this is a film that Paul Thomas Anderson had more creative control on after the success with Boogie Nights a couple years prior, and he's been given the opportunity to pretty much do whatever he wants to do with a story like this. And for the most part, it works. But then it kind of teeters off into craziness, and a little bit too much padding in the second half of the film. It's not a bad movie. It isn't a bad movie by any means necessary, but it's a film that definitely is not another Boogie Nights. It's a film that I think definitely could have been much tighter in terms of like the pacing and the runtime. But other than that, though, there are too many good elements about it that I say that you should see this film. But just don't go into it expecting another Boogie Nights. It's not that good of a film, but it's good enough to say I'd say definitely check it out.
What are you doing out there? This season,
I'm sick and tired of losing.
tradition is becoming a thing of the past.
Why do you think my father put me in charge of bullheaded moron?
I coach my way.
Any given Sunday, life is a contact sport. An Oliver Stone film.
Starts Wednesday, December 22nd.
So this is based off of a book called On Any Given Sunday, written by former NFL defensive end Pat Toomey, and the title is derived from a line in the book, and also used in the film, that a team can win or lose on any given Sunday, which you hear that nowadays on most NFL media, basically saying that, hey, any given Sunday, anybody can win no matter who it is. And you have a story here depicting a fictionalized professional football team coached by Al Pacino, a cast that includes Cameron Diaz, Dennis Quaid, Jamie Foxx, James Woods, LL Cool J, Anne Margaret, Lauren Hawley, Matthew Modine, John C. McGinley, Charlton Heston, Bill Bellamy, Leela Roshan, Aaron Eckhart, Elizabeth Berkley. Features a ton of NFL players, past and present. Jim Brown, Lawrence Taylor, Dick Butkus, Y.A. Tittle, Pat Toomey, of course, Warren Moon, Johnny Unitas, Ricky Williams, Emmett Smith, Terrell Owens, Barry Switzer. I mean, they pack a ton of people into this movie. And it's a pretty good movie. It's Oliver Stone doing what Oliver Stone does best. It doesn't have quite the same edge as something like, you know, some of his earlier works. It's not the same kind of movie like Platoon or Born on the 4th of July or even JFK. It doesn't have that type of a level to it where it really like exposes something that it just really gets the people thinking. It's just a really well-made film and a nice return to form for him after U-Turn was kind of seen as a major misstep in his career. And, it was a nice return, like I said, it was a nice return to form for him. I think the performances overall are very good. The grittiness of the film very much is well done. It does run a little bit too long, though. It's over 2.5 hours long, and it does really get boring at times to the point where you really do you're just waiting for the end credits to come already so you can get out of there. For the most part, it delivers what it promises. It's a film that kind of delves into the trials and tribulations of running a professional football team. But like I said, it doesn't really go to the same levels that some of Stone's earlier works did, where they really just delve deep into the dark issues of many different things, like in Platoon or Born on the 4th of July or JFK. I think those movies do that a whole lot better. This is just a really good film for him, and a nice return to form after his last film kind of crapped out a little bit of his success factor he had going for him at that point. But, really good film. Not one of his best films, but one that I always go back to every once in a while. I think it's a well enough made film to recommend it. Definitely check out Any Given Sunday. So, on to the next movie: Matt Damon, Jude Law, Gwyneth Paltrow, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and the talented Mr. Ripley.
It's Tom. How do you do?
When you can look, but not touch.
I wish I could live Dicky's life for him.
When you can dream, but never be accepted.
You could hardly expect this to go on forever.
Anything can happen. Matt Damon, Gwyneth Paltrow, Jude Law.
I always thought it'd be better to be a fake somebody than a real nobody.
The talented Mr. Ripley, rated R. Christmas Day in theaters everywhere.
So not only is this Anthony Minghell's follow-up to his Oscar-winning Best Picture, The English Patient, this is also the first film based off of Patricia Highsmith's character, Tom Ripley, who has been seen in many different, who is the focus of the novel of the same name, The Talented Mr. Ripley. This takes place in the 1950s, and it stars Damon as Ripley, an underachieving young man that is sent from New York City to Italy to retrieve Dickie Greenleaf. Dickie Greenleaf, I believe, is played by Jude Law. Yeah, Jude Law. I'm thinking of... he's a rich, spoiled playboy, convinces him to return home. However, after failing, Ripley takes extreme measures. And you have characters that are also played by Gwyneth Paltrow, Cate Blanchett, Philip Seymour Hoffman. And the performances really do carry this film over. It's a really intense psychological thriller. Even if you never read these books, which I never read these books before I saw this film, you get so invested in the characters and you get so... It's a deep character study. And just so many great moments in this film of really great performances. Philip Seymour Hoffman alone in this movie has maybe one of the best lines in the movie, where he's just looking at Matt Damon as he's looking at, I believe, as he's looking at this couple, Jude Law and Gwyneth Paltrow, having sex in the boat, and Philip Seymour Hoffman's just giving this look like, Tommy, how's you peeping? And it's just the way his face looks and the way he just looks at him. It's just like that's a great performance from him, and that's just another one of those great roles you look at and say, this guy's really going to be something in the next couple of years. And sure enough, he would eventually win an Oscar, but we'll get to that when we get to Capote in about 6 years. But yeah, this is a really good film. I actually prefer this film over The English Patient by a long shot. I was not a big fan of The English Patient. I thought it was I was kind of like Elaine from Seinfeld on that film. I thought it was boring. I didn't really like it all that much. I would have been that person screaming in the theater saying I hated it and telling everybody to go to hell, But this film is, I think, a really good film. I think it's a really good mystery. It's a really good thriller. It has a lot of inspiration that's been taken several years after its release. I know Family Guy did an episode based off of the story in this episode too. But it's a really good film. I definitely recommend it. The Talented Mr. Ripley. So with that said, let's move on to the next movie, and that is Jim Carrey as Andy Kaufman in Man on the Moon.
Every generation has a star whose talent defies description, whose style is ahead of its time, whose influence can still be felt, even after he's gone. On December 22nd, experience the movie that Rolling Stone, Newsweek, Entertainment Weekly, and Roger Ebert are all raving about. It's the best movie of the year. Man on the Moon, rated R. Starts Wednesday at theaters everywhere.
A movie that should have been way better than it actually ended up being. This is one of those movies that has so much potential to it. The things in there are so close to being perfect, and then it just really craps out in a number of different ways. You basically have the story taking place from Kaufman's steps from childhood to the comedy clubs and television appearances that made him famous, including moments on Saturday Night Live, Late Night with David Letterman, Fridays, his role as Latka on Taxi, and it pays attention to the various inside jokes, scams, put-ons, and happenings what Kaufman was famous for, most significantly his battle with Jerry the King Lawler and his portrayal of the character, the lounge singer Toady Clifton. And later on down the road, there was a documentary made about Jim Carrey's performance as Andy Kaufman, basically saying that his performance was maintained during much of the film's production. They try to make you think like Andy Kaufman just suddenly possessed this performance by Carrey, and that's why he plays the character the way this is in this film. It's trying to make this film seem like a Heart of Darkness type of film, and really, I can't really personally delve into everything that's wrong with this film. I think the Nostalgia Critic did a great video a couple years ago talking about everything that this movie should have been. Jim Carrey, I think, is really good as Andy Kaufman. I think he definitely is the strongest part of the movie, but everything else around him, just like the way the movie tries to pretend like everything is is like, it tries to create like what's the word I want to look for here? Its basic struggles really come down to the typical biopic cliches. It doesn't really want to go deep into the darker elements of Andy Kaufman's life. It just wants to be this peppy, happy, everything it was perfect, and he just unfortunately died for no reason. It tries to pull the Bohemian Rhapsody type of crap, like the whole thing about how it doesn't want to go into the dark stuff because it wants to have kind of like a mass appeal. And with a biopic, you really don't want to get those moments out of there. I mean, Rocket Man, the Elton John biopic that came out just shortly after Bohemian Rhapsody, was a far superior movie because it didn't shy away from showing the darker elements of Elton John's life. I mean, there have been great movies like that really show the darker side of things, and this is one of those movies that really wants to do nothing but make this guy seem like the most happiest person in the world, and like the most cleanest person in the world, and that's not really what happened in life. I mean, they try to do those elements there, but it never feels like you really get the idea that they're trying to do just that, and it really struggles because of that. Not to mention, there are so many moments in this movie where they have all these different personalities from the past in there. They're not even like dressed as they were back in the 70s and 80s. Like David Letterman is just playing David Letterman. Lorne Michaels is just playing Lorne Michaels. What he wasn't looking like in 1999. Same thing with David Letterman. It's just like, you've really got to do better than that guy. Seriously. It's just like the cast of Taxi. Everybody is the same age they were in 1999. It's supposed to take place in the late 70s, early 80s, and like you've got all these guys with like gray hair and all that, and looking like the way they did, and it's just like it really misses the mark on everything they were trying to go for here. And it's a shame because this is a story that really could be well done, and they got a great actor to play him in Jim Carrey, but I don't know what happened to it. I've never seen the documentary. I've heard it's pretty ridiculous. Like, it's kind of like an I'm Not There type of situation, like with Joaquin Phoenix. But, I don't know. I can't really say for certain because I haven't seen it. But I've heard that it goes way too far-fetched than it has any right to. But, the movie is just a mess. It's an unfortunate mess, too, because there are elements to it where it does work. There are elements that actually are well done. But too many of those elements get pushed aside because of the fact that they took these decisions and it didn't work out in the end. It made for a really generic biopic that could have been so much better considering the effort that Carrey put into this, and it just didn't work in the long run, unfortunately. So unfortunately I have to say skip that one, but let's go to a movie that people should see, and that is Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver, and Alan Rickman in the comedy Galaxy Quest.
Never surrender. From out-of-work actors.
By the Sons of Warvan, I shall avenge you.
To outer space heroes.
You will save us.
We are actors, not astronauts.
DreamWorks Pictures invites you to bravely go.
Hi, little guy.
Where no comedy has gone before. Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver, Galaxy Quest. Rated PG. Starts Saturday, December 25th everywhere.
So if you don't know what Galaxy Quest is, shame on you, but it's basically a parody of and an homage to science fiction films and series, most notably Star Trek and its fandom. The film depicts the cast of a fictional cult television series, Galaxy Quest, who are drawn into a real interstellar conflict by actual aliens who think the series is an accurate documentary. And as I mentioned, Alan Weaver and Rickman are among the cast, including Tony Shalhoub, Sam Rockwell, and Daryl Mitchell. This is a really damn good movie. It's a film that parodies and satirizes the Star Trek fan base, but it also really honors them too. I mean, a lot of the several Star Trek cast and crew members really did praise the film, and some people have literally considered this to be part of that the Star Trek film series, even though this is not a Star Trek film. Even though this film is now technically part of Paramount Pictures now, since they bought all the DreamWorks' films, but this movie really is funny. Even if even if you've never seen a Star Trek episode, you can really just get into the storyline alone and just really be like, this is really damn funny stuff. This is probably the best film Tim Allen has ever done. I mean, honestly, this is probably the funniest film he's ever been involved in. The writing is top notch. The visuals still hold up even after all these years. The casting is incredible. It's just an amazing, amazing film, and it did not get the proper respect it did back then. It was kind of the perfect sum up of the year. All these great movies that came out in 1999, and you have all these. Some of them were a lot of them were big hits, but then you get these little gems that did not get the proper respect at first, but later went on to have cult followings in the years since then. This film definitely has had that legacy, and it's well deserved. It's a well made film. I can't recommend this one enough. If you have not seen Galaxy Quest, do yourself a favor and watch it, man. It's definitely worth it in the end. So with that said, on to our next movie, and that is Angelina Jolie and Winona Ryder in Girl Interrupted.
New York Times, Time Magazine, critics everywhere are calling Girl Interrupted a triumph. It's an emotional, uplifting experience filled with humor and truth. The New York Times raves Winona Ryder is at her penetrating best, and Golden Globe nominee Angelina Jolie gives a ferocious, white-hot performance.
One step and I'll jam this in my aorta.
Your aorta is in your chest.
Good to know.
Girl Interrupted, rated R, opens everywhere Friday.
James Mangold's follow-up to Copland. This follows a young woman who spends 18 months institutionalized in a psychiatric hospital following a suicide attempt. And this woman is Winona Ryder. Angelina Jolie is one of the other people in this hospital, along with Clea Duvall, Brittany Murphy, Elizabeth Moss. Jared Leto's also in here. Angela Betts, Jeffrey Tambor, Vanessa Redgrave, Whoopi Goldberg. Angelina Jolie won the Academy Award for this for Best Supporting Actress. I don't even think Winona Ryder herself was nominated for this, honestly. The performances in here, I think, are what carry it overall. It does feel like it's trying to be the next generation, is this generation's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which, that's a film that's really hard to top, even by today's standards, but this film, I think, tried its best to try to come close to it, but it didn't quite get there as much as I think they wanted it to. But the real reason to check this movie out are the two performances by Winona Ryder and Angelina Jolie. You can tell they put their all into this movie, and it really does show on screen. It really is the best elements of the film. A lot of the film itself is just kind of a little bit too cliched, riddled, and too Oscar baitish for its own good. And I think that's where it really struggles in the end. But like I said, the real reason you check this movie out is to see the performances by Ryder and Jolie. You don't get disappointed by that whatsoever. It makes the film almost more than worth it in the end. But for a one-time watch, it's definitely good. But the best thing you can say about it is that Ryder and Jolie really do keep the what am I trying to say here? Keep the enjoyment of the film going. I mean, it's a really well-made film, but it's one of those ones where you can watch it once and be satisfied with it, and you really will not have another reason to really check it out again after the next time you see it. I mean, like I said, you watch it for the performances. It's definitely worth it for those. But other than that, though, it's good. It's a really good film. I do recommend it. So that's Girl Interrupted. On to our next film, Angela's Ashes.
Years ago, a teacher from Brooklyn wrote the story of his childhood that was embraced by the whole world. Now, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author Frank McCourt says the film is the perfect realization of my book. It is everything I could have hoped for or imagined, and I sing its praises. Gene Shalit says it's an immediate Academy Award contender, a triumph. Angela's Ashes, an Alan Parker film, rated R. Starts Friday, January 21st in theaters everywhere.
Yeah, it's probably not a good sign for a movie if the writer of the book is doing nothing but praising that his film adaptation that he had a hand in for a good 2/4 of that 2/3 of that commercial. But this is based off the best-selling autobiography by Frank McCord. Angela's Ashes follows the experiences of young Frankie and his family as they try against all odds to escape the poverty endemic in the slums of pre-war Limerick. It opens with the family in Brooklyn, but following the death of one of Frankie's siblings, they return home only to find the situation there even worse. Prejudices against Frankie's Northern Irish father makes his search for employment in the Republic difficult despite him having fought for the IRA, and when he does find money, he spends it on nothing but drinks. But this is Alan Parker's second to last film as a director. The next film he would do that his last film would be is The Life of David Gale with Kevin Spacey. But this film here, I really don't remember too much about it. I've always seen this picture, this poster I'm looking at right here of this kid on the front of it. It looks like it's kind of trying to be like the 500. It's kind of like how Girl Interrupted was trying to be the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest for this generation. This feels like it was trying to be the 500 Blows for this generation, because I got a lot of 500 Blows type of mentalities looking at the poster and the trailer for this. Never seen the film, never heard anyone really saying that you need to see this film, but probably isn't too bad, honestly. But I've had no real interest in actually seeing the film at any point, so I don't know. Maybe one day I will, but not anytime soon. So, moving on to the next film, Snow Falling on Cedars.
I love you,
Snow Falling on Cedars, rated PG-13, now playing in select cities nationwide January 7th.
So the story here is that you have a Japanese-American fisherman accused of killing his neighbor at sea. In the 1950s, race figures into the trial, and so does reporter Ishmael. Ishmael is played by Ethan Hawke. James Cromwell is also here as the judge. Max von Sydow, Richard Jenkins, James Rebhorn, Sam Shepard. Good cast overall here. This is directed by Scott Hicks, who gave us Shine a couple years ago. Another one I've never seen before. I've always seen the posters for this, but I've never really had the urge to go and watch it. Doesn't look like it has the best reviews overall, so probably a movie I won't be checking out anytime soon. I've never had anybody really say that it's actually a good film or not, but could be good. Not much more to say about that one. So on to the next film, Julie Taymor's Titus.
Award-winning director Julie Taymor invites you to a feast of vengeance.
The forest walks wide and spacious from rape and villainy.
Madness. Power, lust, and the ultimate sacrifice of love. Anthony Hopkins, Jessica Lange. Titus.
We'll find a day to massacre them all.
Rated R. Opens Christmas Day at the Union Square Theater.
Hey, I don't see Christopher Titus anywhere. What the hell is this? It's interesting how this movie came out and then Christopher Titus had a show come out, not but a couple weeks after it came out, but very funny, underrated show, by the way. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out, but we're not talking about that one. This is Julie Taymor in her directorial debut after her time on is in Broadway. This is adapted from William Shakespeare's revenge tragedy, Titus Andronicus, and stars Anthony Hopkins as the titular Roman general, chronicling his downfall and returning victoriously from war. And you have Jessica Lange, Alan Cumming, Cole Fiore, Angus McFadden, Matthew Rhys, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, and Julie Taymor really makes some visually pleasing looking films, but she's only made a couple of films, mostly staying on Broadway for the most part. She did this, she did Frida, and then she did Across the Universe, which I really liked Across the Universe, and I've only seen little bits and pieces of Frida, but her films have these gorgeous visual looks to them that really do stand out on these films, and this is one of those films that definitely has a nice visual look to it. Anthony Hopkins is very good in the film, Jessica Lange is very good in the film. It's everything you expect from them. It's a decent little film. It's a film that I would say that it's one I haven't seen in a while, but I've seen a lot of Julie Taymor's other film roles, directorial efforts. I think stuff like Across the Universe and Frida are much better movies. This is a really solid film overall, one that a lot of people haven't really looked at, honestly, or really even heard of for the most part, but it's definitely worth a watch. It's definitely worth a watch just for the visual look alone. I think that's the most impressive thing about it. That's really the one thing I would say to definitely check this movie out for is the visual style of it, but you'll really like the performances for the main characters as well. I think those are very well done too. So with that said, on to our last film, and that is play it to the bone.
Best friends.
Did you ever take a fight on short notice? How short?
One big problem.
You guys never fought each other, right?
Now,
I got $100 grand for you guys to split.
because they pay us. They'll get one last shot at the title.
Just back off, okay?
If they don't kill each other first.
Kiss mine.
Well, I might do that, because ever since you shaved your head, you look so hideous.
Play it to the bone.
I just don't like you.
Naga. Rated R. Starts Friday, January 14th.
This is one of those movies I would always see in like a used video store and used DVD store, and I would see many copies of this movie. I've never heard anybody ever talk about this film. This is a film that stars Woody Harrelson and Antonio Banderas as two boxers and best friends who travel to Las Vegas in order to fight each other for the sake of a chance to compete for the middleweight title. And you also have Lolita Davidovich, Tom Sizemore, Lucy Liu, and Robert Wagner among the cast. Directed and written by Ron Shelton. And Ron Shelton's made a lot of good films up to this point. Bull Durham, Blaze, White Man Can't Jump, Tin Cup. This film in particular, I don't really know too much about because I've never seen the film. Like I said, I've always seen it in places like Half Price Books, CD Warehouse, these places where they would have used DVDs and videos and all that. And I've always wanted to check it out. I just never really gotten the urge to do it. Nothing has really told me, you need to see this movie. You need to see this you need to see this movie. And nobody's ever said, definitely see this movie. And I see the reviews for this are not the greatest here. So, chances are this movie probably isn't as good as some of his other works. But, I don't know. I mean, it's got too many good cast members in here that I really do like that could make this work overall. But, like I said, I haven't seen the film, so I can't really say too much about it, unfortunately. But, maybe I should check it out one day, just because I just want to see if it's I've got this weird thing, like, if I see multiple copies of something like a movie or a TV show, and so it's just basically the world telling me, you should probably see this, even if it's bad, even if it's not great overall, you should see this at one point. So maybe if I can find this somewhere at a reasonable price, I probably will check it out, but it probably won't be anytime soon, though. But that's Play to the Bone.
We all know it's impossible to see music, yet many composers have tried to take musical sounds and give them a pictorial meaning.
Walt's original idea was that Fantasia would be a continuing work in progress, and Fantasia 2000 is the realization of that dream.
Now, the first ever full-length animated motion picture, exclusively in IMAX theaters. Walt Disney Pictures is proud to present Fantasia 2000, the IMAX experience. Presenting 7 all-new journeys into the imagination, along with a classic favorite, in a motion picture unlike any other. On January 1st, exclusively in IMAX theaters around the world, Walt Disney Pictures proudly presents Fantasia 2000.
Maybe long overdue was a little bit of an understatement, but this was a film this was part of the original idea of what Fantasia was supposed to be. Walt Disney had originally wanted to make Fantasia a continuing series of movies, but because the studio was putting a lot of money into this and they weren't making it back during the 1940s, that kind of had to stop. They had to stop doing that, and so the short segments they were working on would later go into their own little animated, these little package films. Like you have stuff like Saludos Amigos, The Three Caballeros, Make My Music, Fun and Fancy Free, all those type of films. A lot of those ideas that were set for those films would later go into those movies instead of an actual sequel to Fantasia. Now we're about almost 70 years late. 60 years later, because Fantasia came out in 1940. This is 1999. 60 years later, we have the official sequel that they've been working on for many years, and kind of like Fantasia, it has a lot of animated segments set to pieces of classical music, with the composer James Levine narrating several segments along with different celebrities. You have Steve Martin having a segment, Itzhak Perlman, Quincy Jones, Bette Midler, James Earl Jones, Penn and Teller, Angela Lansbury. All these segments are directed by Don Hahn, who also had a couple segments with Mickey Mouse in here. The movie itself is basically 7 new shorts, and then they put the Sorcerer's Apprentice in there because, of course, that's the signature short film of the original Fantasia. So, really, you're getting about 7 or 8. What is that? About 88% of newer stuff, 12% being the Sorcerer's Apprentice. But the big selling point of this movie was the fact that it was put in IMAX theaters. It's the first animated feature film to be released in IMAX theaters, which was that was probably the biggest deal of them all, just so you could see these movies on that gigantic ass screen. And man, if we had an IMAX theater around here when this movie came out, I would have definitely gone to see it. I would have asked my parents to take me to see it, but unfortunately the film never made it to an IMAX theater around here. Even the big one in downtown Pittsburgh, the Carnegie Science Center, where they had the IMAX theater there. But that was the only one that we had back then. We now have a couple of them nowadays. But man, that was a golden opportunity wasted away. But I did get to see it finally after all these years, many years ago. And the segments you get segments based off of Symphony No. 5 by Ludwig van Beethoven, Pines of Rome, Rhapsody in Blue, is designed in the style of Al Hirschfeld's caricatures. Piano Concerto No. 2, Allegro, Opus 102 by Dmitri Shostakovich. The Carnival of the Animals, which is the Donald Duck short with which is basically Noah's Ark. The Sorcerer's Apprentice, of course. Pomp and Circumstance Marches 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Firebird Suite. As Roy Disney mentioned in the trailer, it represented Walt's idea of this continuing into a series of films with new blendings of music and animation over the years. Just like with the original Fantasia, though, this was a disappointment and a costly one, hence why a lot of the sequels were dropped. Segments that were actually planned for other movies basically were made into short segments of their own. Most notably, the Salvador Dali one, Destino, was made as a short film a couple years after this movie came out. And like with the original, nearly 60 years, Fantasia 2000 was released, and now the question becomes whether or not was it worth the wait. And overall, it generally is. Like the original Fantasia, you've got the nice animated musical sequences, well done. They show a real testament to Disney and what their animators were able to do with these amazing animators, and allowing them to showcase their impressive talents here. I mean, the Firebird Suite alone is the highlight. Just gorgeous animation with beautiful music to go around. And I would say the runner-up is definitely the Hirschfeld tribute. Where the film starts to lose its focus is the wraparound segments. The reason why they worked in the first film is because it was one person simply introducing the segments, not trying to do much to get cheap laughs because they think people will fall asleep during these segments. Fantasia 2000 basically does the complete opposite of that. It would be just fine if the celebrity wraparounds were just like the ones from the original film, but no. They really feel out of place. Steve Martin could be really funny, but when you have to do a comedy skit for something that should be a minute in length, that's desperation there. And the wraparounds feel like just kind of waste of time. It's just like, get to what we want to see. Get to the shorts already. Also, the shorts, a couple of them do fall flat, particularly the Flamingo with the yo-yo. It just feels like something out of place in a Fantasia movie. Like, you'd see that more in something like Tiny Toons or Animaniacs or one of those shows, not in a Fantasia movie. Even the Toy Soldier segment doesn't really work, but that's mostly because of the choppy animation style that they went with. Nowadays, they can make that work, but back then, it was still really new technology to work with on that front, but it just doesn't come together as well as the other segments do. You know, trying to top a movie like Fantasia with a sequel 6 decades after the original is a very tough thing to do. And for the most part, it does its job well. It's the celebrity wraparounds I think are the biggest distraction, and a couple of shorts are not that great. They're not terrible, but they just don't fit the mold of what you'd expect from a Fantasia movie. It would have been nice to see this on the big screen in IMAX, just get that full experience. But at home on Blu-ray and on Disney Plus, you definitely do get your money's worth. If you like the original Fantasia, I think you'll be more than happy with Fantasia 2000, but just don't go in there expecting a movie as good as the original film, because that's going to be really tough to take in, the fact that this is not as good as the original, but it's fine for what it is. It's not a terrible movie by any means, but it definitely could have been really great if some of the segments had been better presented and the celebrity wraparounds weren't trying to be stand-up comedy bits. But I digress. Let's go ahead and move on to the last movie of the 20th century that we have here. The last movie released, and that is Denzel Washington in The Hurricane.
He had power that could not be matched, courage
not be shaken.
I will not wear the clothes of a guilty man.
And a spirit.
We gotta take it to the federal court. Judge is gonna throw it out.
That could not be broken.
Then we transcend the law. We get back to humanity.
Golden Globe Award nominee, Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor, Denzel Washington. The Hurricane. Rated R. Now in select theaters. Check local listing.
Another big movie for Denzel Washington in the fall of 1999. This is basically the story about Reuben the Hurricane Carter, who was a former middleweight boxer who was wrongly convicted of a triple murder in a bar in Paterson, New Jersey. The script was written by Armand Bernstein and Dan Gordon from Carter's autobiography, The 16th Round, from #1 contender to 45472, as well as another nonfiction work, Lazarus and the Hurricane, The Freeing of Reuben the Hurricane Carter. It depicts Carter's arrest, his life in prison, and how he was freed by the love and compassion of a teenager from Brooklyn named Leslie Martin, who was played by Vichelis Rion Shannon. Don't know who that person is, per se. I've never seen her in anything notable, but and his Canadian foster family. And unlike The Bone Collector, which came out around the same time, this was much more higher praise. It got Denzel Washington another Academy Award nomination. It's Denzel Washington, man. I've talked about it before. He's the greatest actor working right now. Movies like this are why it is. He's really given it his all here. It's a film that's very familiar to something like Malcolm X, where it's pretty much kind of the same thing. He's a guy who ends up going into prison and ends up changing his life after all these years in prison. But that movie is great on its own merits. This is a great film, too, and it works mostly because of Denzel Washington and Norman Jewison's passion for this project. This is a film that he directed. I think this was one of the last films he directed before he died, I think. Is he still alive? No, he is still alive. 97 years old, man. Good Lord. Yeah, he's been retired for a while now. He did some things after this, but this was the last notable film that I remember him doing. It's a really good film. It's Denzel Washington doing what Denzel Washington does best. It's a really good story, and you really do get invested in this character, even though the story seems a little bit too familiar for Washington, considering what he did with Malcolm X, but it's a well-done film. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. And just like that, we are done with the 20th century of movies.